Hello and welcome to my review of Mashle Magic and Muscle Chapter 56, Mash Bernadette and the Visionary of Fire. Spoiler alert, there isn't actually any fire in this chapter or any fighting at all. This chapter serves as a more light-hearted and comedic break from the tournament's hectic goings-on, while also setting up more interesting sights down the road. So, the chapter starts off with Mash noticing Margaret staring at him with an ominous presence, but instead of trying to confront him now, the sound mage turns away while telling Mash that he is looking forwards to the next test. What that test will be, isn't said, but from his words I assume it will be something which puts him directly opposed to Mash. And so, as Margaret is walking away, Mash twitches visible, causing Finn to ask him what is wrong in a panicked voice. To which Mash responds that his pectoral muscle is warning him. I do not know if I should just take this as some sort of running gag or a sign that Mash is subconsciously capable of determining who and who is not a true threat to him, as this was noticeable brought up when he faced Tua, who is a divine visionary himself. It would be interesting if through his constant training, Mash developed a sort of sixth sense through his muscles to avoid danger. From that scene we move over to what appears to be a private booth with Wahlberg and another divine visionary named Caldo Gehenna, the man in charge of the Magic Talent Administration. Caldo is commenting on how Mash, who he refers to as Mushroom Head, might have his winning streak come to an end if he faces off against Margaret, further implying that the next test will be a test of combat. But on a side note, if Mash were to become a divine visionary, what would his title be? All the divine visionaries seem to have a position of power in some form or another, but Mash does not have magic, so what would he oversee should he win? Perhaps the study of physical condition on magical power? Food for thought. From Caldo we learn that the only reason Rain became a visionary in his second year was because Margaret opted not to participate. Which in of itself is interesting because Margaret has taken an interest in Rain in their previous encounter, so why didn't he take the chance to face him in the last Divine Visionary exam? Did he underestimate him back then, or was Rain just not yet powerful enough to catch his attention? Either way, we are told that Caldo is responsible for examining every candidate, and as the head of the Magic Talent Administration, Margaret has the best chance. As after seeing his performance a few years back, he believes that his second magic is truly, and he stops there, not finishing his sentence. If Margaret took part in the exam a few years back, why is he not already a divine visionary? Did someone beat him, did he withdraw, or was it some other tournament where Caldo witnesses his power and impressed him so much? Either way, this only pours more fuel onto the fire of hype that I am feeling regarding Mash and Margette's inevitable clash. Wahlberg staying silent for a moment before closing his eyes and agreeing with him reluctantly, only to spur Caldo to chuckle as he comments how, under normal circumstances, he would agree with him, but instead he has a lot riding on Mash. However, Caldo claims to not yet have seen what makes him so worth of catching everyone's attention. If he truly feels that way, then he is just too full of himself and proud of his magical abilities to recognize Mash's accomplishments, not least of all defeating a user of a Master Cane without magic himself. That feat alone should certainly catch the attention of anyone in this world where magic rules supreme. But despite that, he still thinks to himself about how Margaret is a more fitting candidate and Mash will not be capable of competing with his power, the difference between them being too great. Given the fact that, even when fighting against Carpaccio, he did not appear to be pushed to his absolute limits, I wouldn't be so quick to count him out. From that conversation we transition over to a waiting room where we find Margaret seemingly relaxing before the next test, where he gets approached by LeBlanc Russell, who, after being, in his mind, humiliated by Mash in the first round, wants to make him pay. So, he tells Margaret that apparently, he does not have any magic, so he ought to show him who is boss. Asking if he would want LeBlanc to put a laxative into, whatever he was about to say goes unfinished. As with a single flick of his finger, not even appearing to use his wand, Margaret sends him flying backwards into the wall, causing him to cough up blood before looking over his shoulder with disdain clear in his one visible eye. He then gives LeBlanc a single warning: should he try to spoil his encounter with Mash, he'll kill him. From there we pan around to see Uta is also there, leaning against the wall, and Margaret does not hesitate to threaten him as well. Uta pushes up his glass while telling him that as long as he does the job right, he'll stay quiet, to which Margaret tells him that's good. And as the two of them stare each other down, LeBlanc, despite being smacked around by Margaret, cannot help but admire him for staring down a divine visionary without breaking a sweat. I wonder how a clash between Margaret and Uta would go. We do not know what sort of magic Uta uses, but he seems quite confident, although he could also be the sort who is more suited into manipulating others into doing the job for him. Either way, it does not look like we will be seeing that fight anytime soon. From that hostile situation we move into the more comedic section of the chapter in a different waiting room, where Mash is speaking to himself as if he is being interviewed by someone, asking why he trains so hard, to which he says that it started with his pops. He talks about how he hated it but kept adding weights, and now he takes pride in himself. With a completely serious expression he says that the reason he lifts dumbbells is because they are there. The whole while Dot is playing the violin like Mash is disposing some great wisdom or poetry. All the while Mash continues to speak about how the reason humans have arms is so they can lift dumbbells, and the reason they have legs is so that they can deadlift dumbbells. Finn seems to be the only one in the right state of mind here, realizing that Mash is in fact talking to himself. But given that it is Mash, I am inclined to believe that he might agree with what he is saying, given how he did not spend a lot of time around other people growing up, and his hobby and passion might actually be lifting weights. Then Lemon, who we have not seen in a while, starts doing it as well, sitting on a bench surrounded by darkness, asking out loud, why is she an emotional burden? To which Finn cannot help but exclaim, not her too, as she continues to go on with her fake interview while being put under an imaginary spotlight. Talking about how she never wanted to be an emotional burden, but over time he became her everything, her whole world, happiness, and sorrow, so that is how she became a dependent. She is a burden because he is there. Finn correctly assesses that this is a waste of time as Dot and Lemon begin dancing together, with Dot asking if she will love him, to which she responds never, causing him to cry out about a broken heart. And once again I find myself agreeing with Finn when he thinks about how he wants to go home, which is a completely reasonable response when assaulted by such insanity. Then an alarm clock goes off and Mash makes himself his protein shake, commenting about how it's important part of training to nourish your muscles, to which Finn responds with what I can only imagine is the most blank, dead inside okay. Their shenanigans get interrupted by the appearance of Caldo appearing sitting right behind them. Commenting about how he admires Mash's dedication, how he wishes he could be like him. He seems to be carrying some sort of sword with him, which makes me think he might be a more melee-focused mage than someone who stands at range and fires off spells from a safe position. Finn freaks out, questioning when he got there, which is the most reasonable response, but of course Mash is utterly unfazed, only commenting how he is the divine visionary who bullied him. And as everyone else is now questioning what a divine visionary is doing there, Caldo says how his interest had been piqued by Mash, so he wants to play a little game with him before the next round. And of course, Mash gives him a deadpan no, because he is on break. Dot, mirroring LeBlanc's reaction to Margaret's words to her, is impressed by the fact Mash could sass a visionary. Telling him how he is going to go far, to which Mash, still unfazed, tells him he is going right to the top. But Caldo isn't done yet. He tells Mash that he is the head of the Magic Talent Administration, meaning that anyone joining the Bureau of Magic gets inspected by him. This all seems to go over Mash's head as his eyebrows droop while staring at him. So Caldo explains it more easily for him. If he does not like what he sees, Mash might not get to become a divine visionary, which I am calling complete rubbish on. If he has that much authority over who does not become a divine visionary, what would be the point of the tournament? Of the tests? He might hold some sway over it, but I seriously doubt he will be capable of actually stopping Mash should he have an overwhelming victory. But it does confirm the fact that all divine visionaries are a part of the Bureau of Magic. He then comments about how, despite that it is his choice, he is just the head of Magic Talent after all, laying on a bit thick, but even so Mash agrees to play his game. Finn freaks out as he always does, which is reasonable given the circumstance, while Caldo comments how if he wins the game, he will grant him a pass on the test. What he means by that is not certain. Does he mean the next test or the examination of magic talent? If it is the next test, it would certainly serve to anger Margaret, as he will be denied his chance to clash with Mash and might result in him taking out that frustration on one of Mash's friends. So, what is the game he wants to play? Simple: you look, and you lose. And as he raises his finger to point, Dot and Finn both freak out, while Mash himself just twirls his own fingers, with a deadpan expression while declaring that the game is fine by him. The final scene of the chapter is Caldo staring at Mash with eyes closed and a flat smile on their face. Honestly, I seriously doubt this is going to be anywhere near as simple as it seems, and I would be a bit disappointed if it does turn out to be just that simple. What I have been curious about this entire chapter is, where is Lance? We know he wasn't eliminated during the previous exam, and yet while everyone else in his friend group is goofing off, he is nowhere to be seen. I wonder if that's going to be relevant later on down the line, like maybe he too got a visit from a divine visionary, speaking to him about his sister. Who knows? But it certainly seems quite strange that when Lemon, who isn't part of the exam, is there, but Lance, who isn't there. But that is it for me. I've been the Anonymous Weeb, and I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you happen to be.